Hey guys, last video I promised I was going to do a more comprehensive video on the loop in general and the list that I play now, which is unfortunately not the mill version, but we'll get to that. But first I will quickly run through the loop for anyone who hasn't seen it. Obviously if you have, you can skip this. So the first thing, we need Tilika to be active, and we need Miyun, Riku, and either 2 white mage or a white mage and a Bartz. So I'll demonstrate both. So the first one, this is simple. So remember, we've activated Tilika, so she only costs 3. Play the Riku, bounce the 3 backups that we care about. Always tap them. So every time you tap for anything during this, always tap Miyun first and then the activating backups. Now we can play the Miyun. We'll draw a card, and this is the card that we're going to get over and over again. So we're going to keep drawing a card off that Miyun like that. Play a white mage, activate 3, leave the Miyun tapped. Tap the white mage, activate 3. And now we're back to the start. And we can do that again and again. We can draw infinite cards that way. The other one is Bartz. So again, assuming we've already done Tilika, you might have to, maneuver a couple things to actually end up with the, the Tilika live with the white mage also active. But that's really easy when you have the cards available, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. This one is effectively the same thing. Play the Riku, bounce the 3 cards that we care about. Play the Miyun, bounce the Riku, draw a card. There's our free card. Play the white mage, activate 3, and then play the Bartz. And activate them all. And again, we're back to the start, so it's basically the same thing. The math behind it, the reason it works is because Riku costs 3, and Miyun costs 1, white mage costs 1, so 2 white mage, Miyun, and Riku cost 6 total, and 2 white mage activate 3 each, so they activate 6, so we're spending 6, activating 6, and then of course we get the free card for Miyun. Bartz is basically the same thing, except instead of costing 1 and giving us 3, it costs 3 and gives us 5, so the math still works out. That's just basically why it works. What most people don't realize is that you actually don't need every one of those cards to start the loop. In fact, you can do it with only one of white mage or Bartz. You don't need the second white mage or white mage and Bartz, because, and I'll demonstrate, so say we don't have access to the Bartz, for example, and we've got, so let's have a Tilika sitting there. We can instead tap 3, play the Riku. Now, only bounce ones we care about, so it's only 2 this time. And now if we play the Riku, the Miyun, bounce our Riku, we'll draw our card. So that's the card we draw. And then if we tap this for the white mage, so this is assuming we only have white mage, not Bartz. Don't activate that. Activate. No, we can activate, that's fine. Now we can discard the card we drew. Well, in this case we wouldn't. So let's say we'll discard different cards. So we can discard any card we want, really. Assuming we haven't seen this Bartz yet, just pretend that I didn't draw that. We can tap this to play the Riku. And now we can do the same thing again. So we actually just get to bounce these 2. Now, literally identical. Bounce this Riku, draw a card. Again, I drew another bounce a card, but assuming we don't immediately draw the next card we need for the loop, we can keep doing this. So now we can play the white mage to activate 3. And then, discard to play the Riku. And so in this case, we're infinitely cycling. We're discarding a card, drawing a card over and over again. So, we're not getting the free card each time off Miyun, because now we're only getting plus 2 CP off one of the backups instead of, plus 4 CP from using 2 of them, which means that now we are spending 6, gaining 4 of the backups that we activate. Sorry, we're not spending 6. We're spending 5, gaining 3 off the backups we activate, but the card we get off Miyun is the extra 2. So we're going 5 for 5, including the Miyun, which means we are actually now infinitely cycling. And, that's not inherently giving us infinite cards. However, that means we can get to the loop with that. And I mean, as you saw, I immediately drew into, the Bartz or the white mage because I put them on top of my deck. But, you could be drawing not those cards, but the moment you get to either the second white mage or the white mage with your Bartz, now you can do the actual loop. So realistically, you actually have the loop, even if you don't have the extra backup yet. And that's something that I think quite a few people overlook and don't realize they can do. But that's all the stuff about the loops and the mechanics and how to do it. Now, what do we do if we want to build a deck around this? So the core is the following. This is, in my opinion, the absolute mandatory cards to play. And you'll see I've maxed out every loop card, naturally. Miyun, Riku especially, also Bartz and white mage, and Tilika. Now, Nostalon is a no-brainer because it searches Tilika. And, Tilika is the card the entire thing rolls around. So having 6 copies of that is really good. Also, the fact that it's a backup, as well, lets us build backups quite easily. Shantoto is obviously a natural fit. Shantoto is one of the reasons decks like this can actually work, because it basically... So in this case, interestingly, what it generally does, usually Shantoto, the idea is that it, prevents your opponent from going too deep, so it prevents them from creating, putting too many bodies on the board, enough to threaten to kill you. If they just go all in like that, then they know they're going to get Shantoto and they will lose all their forwards, and now they can't really do anything. So that's usually its main use. But actually in this deck in particular, just the fact that it buys you a turn is really good and really important. That's usually all you actually need. So in this case, it's actually feasible to just use it on, even if you're not actually gaining any value out of it, or you're not really like punishing an overextension, you're just removing those forwards. They can't hit you next turn, unless of course they have a bunch of haste forwards. But the fact that you're basically preventing them from dealing damage to you next turn most of the time, or ish, is very relevant while getting a backup in play. But I mean, I don't really need to explain that. Y'shtola, again, really obvious, really straightforward. It protects anything, really, so it protects your loop. It's also a nice thing to just kind of sit on the field. It's very, very hard to kill. Another important thing about Y'shtola, it can cancel Amaterasu on Shantoto, so don't discount that. If you're against a deck and you need your Shantoto resolve and Amaterasu could stop it, and they might have Amaterasu, then playing an Y'shtola first can actually be fine. Even though you're going to lose straight away to Shantoto, it guarantees that it will go through. Now, one card I don't see people maxing out on, which I think is a big mistake, is Fiona. And this card is very degenerate, anything like this, because, the only drawback of Fiona is that it costs a bunch of CP, right? Basically sacrificing 3 CP. Just turn one of your cards into a different card. But of course, if that card means you get infinite cards, then that doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how much CP you spend. If it gets you to the loop, you now have infinite. So that investment doesn't matter anymore. So Fiona's really good, especially because, searching backups is not something you can do otherwise, especially Miyun. So Miyun is often the one that you'll be looking for. Forwards are much easier to get to, like Riku, there's ways to search that, whereas Miyun, Fiona's basically the only option, but that's fine. So that's basically all. Miss Dragon is the last card, so very similar to Y'shtola. It's protection, pretty much. So it protects Riku from most things, any summon, almost, and, other damaging effects they might have in play. Like action abilities and things like that they could use to do damage to Riku in response. So Miss Dragon is just another good protection card. Also, gives us another Earth card so that we can actually play Tilika, Shantoto, because, as you can see, most of the loot cards are wind. But now, the next question is, if we're aiming to do the loop, as reliably as possible, what are we going to do with it, right? How we don't just automatically win the game by drawing our entire deck. We have to actually deal 7 damage to our opponent, or mill them out. But, I said I'll talk about that in a second. So, the first thing that a lot of people jumped on was Shikarees. And I think the reason for this is because at the time, when I first posted the loop a long time ago, there was a popular deck that was already abusing Shikarees with Tilika in it. Had Tilika and Miyun already. Probably had White Mage as well. So, all it really needed was to add the Riku, and then it basically had the loop available. So, that was a natural fit. And, Shikarees are, that's fine. That is a way to kill someone. If you play X, Y, and Z and you manage to get the party attack through, maybe a couple extra forwards or whatever, that should be enough to kill someone. I've seen people use Paradise for it. I think that is going a bit too far. And, I like Paradise. I'd love an excuse to use Paradise, but, it's very flashy. I don't think Ignite is the card you want in a deck like this at all. You don't want a dark card sitting around like that. You don't want the fact that if you lose that Ignite, damage or it gets removed or whatever, then you can no longer do it. There's lots of problems, I think, with Ignite that it's completely unnecessary. So my preferred way, if I'm using Shikarees, is to play Chocobo and Tilika. So Chocobo can give X haste. He's missing haste himself, but he gives the others haste. So Chocobo lets them party attack straight away. And Tilika, of course, we are already bouncing backups. So we're already doing a loop where we bounce and replay backups. So you can just chuck Tilika in there a few times and, give Tilika to all your Shikarees. Now you can party attack with them twice. And that's also very flashy, but you don't have the drawbacks of, a dark card you have to have in your deck with an additional copy for its special. And, the problem, if they somehow stop you, you lose the game from Ignite's effect. So yeah, and also all these cards are wind, which is actually very convenient as well. So that's my preferred way to do this Shikarees. And that's, that's an option. That's fine. Then of course we have the mill loop, which I've showed a video about this. I've demonstrated it. The main issue with the mill loop is that it relies, you basically need all these cards available. So if you're missing any one of these pieces, either, both, say you're playing 2 copies of each, if like one's damaged, one's removed, or you've discarded too many of them, you don't have a way to get them all back. Basically, there's too many cards, there's too many ways that, if you're missing one of the pieces, you can't do it anymore, which means you can't mill them. And the big problem with that is that this version does not have enough other things to do, enough other forwards to actually kill your opponent. So you actually can't really win if you don't have access to the mill loop. So that's the main issue with that. So if we want a way to kill someone, we want it to be... On this basis, we need it to have the least required cards, basically. We want it to be as flexible as possible. Of course, we're going to need something. We need some way to actually, you know, turn a bunch of cards we've drawn into killing our opponent, especially before their next turn. And so, my current version is this. Now, the two key cards in here, the two key points, are Illawa and Luminous Puma. So, Illawa is a way to give all your forward haste. The other way, there is another way. You can play Hashmal with Shikaree X. Someone played a list with that in it, which is very funny. I think that's quite cute. However, I actually think Illawa is a little bit better, mainly because Illawa is only, you know, you just need 2 copies of Illawa. That's the only thing you need, realistically, and now you can kill them, as long as you have enough forwards. And so that's why I'm playing a lot of different one-offs. So, you know, you've got, as long as you have, you know, 7 different forwards, you'll always have a Riku, you usually have an Ishtola, you'll have the Illawa, you know, you only really need like 4 others of the rest to kind of, you know, close it out. That's good. The reason I like that a bit better than something like Hashmal or Shikaree X is because that's 2 cards you require. You need Shikaree X and Hashmal, and accessing Hashmal, you know, if you've discarded it, you're going to need something like Kryl to get it back. You know, Puma can't get that back, and neither can Kusith. So the reason I've got Puma, I don't have Kusith anymore. I did used to have Kusith, but I replaced it with more different forwards. The reason I prefer Puma of Kusith is mainly for the EX. That's the best part about it. But Puma gives 2 cards instead of 1. So if we have 3 copies of Puma, that's 6 forwards we can get back from our break zone, which is, you know, huge. It means that if we've discarded these, because you don't want to be playing any of these, we want to loop them, right? So as long as if all we do is not die and get to the loop and then do the loop, you know, the rest of the cards we're going to be discarding, Puma means we can just get them all back once we've done that. You know, we've got infinite cards, now we can just grab all the whatever forwards back we need, including Illawa if we need it, and then finish them that way. Play, you know, 7 forwards, including the Illawa, shoal it, and hit them. So that's the key in this instance. And all the forwards that I'm playing are just kind of like very Earth and Wind forwards that might do something extra at some point. Zidane is a natural one. You can actually probably play. You can play more Zidane. That's one of the only other forwards that you would want to play. You know, even while you're trying to get to the loop, it's a card that you might actually use to help get to the loop. But it's not as necessary as something like a Stola. So I've opted to spread more out. Archangel CT is just like a little thing, like it'll block something, it'll probably kill something. Wall means you don't get, you know, cheesed by random EX targeting EXs when you're going for game. Raoban is spot removal, which is kind of rare in these colors, and it's kind of funny. You can, you know, play it, kill yourself, Puma it back, and do it again. Of course, you don't actually need to do that, because one thing to remember, once you start looping, during that loop, you know, you're drawing infinite cards. While Riku's not on the field, you can, you know, bounce an additional backup at some point and just discard 3 and play Shantoto. Like, so don't worry about them having forwards, because once you're at the loop, you can just at any point during that loop, before you play any other forwards, you can just Shantoto them and then continue doing your loop. So yeah, you probably won't even need a Raoban, but you know, that's just kind of extra thing. It's more for spot removal in the meantime. Cecil, really good anti-aggro card, and also the instant speed spot removal is quite useful too, or it can be useful at least to, you know, kill certain things, certain threats, especially something like Zidane. So that's the main point here. The extra backups. So there's only one Althea. I like Althea. It's quite good here, although we are already playing a lot of backups, and Althea doesn't actually directly interact with the loop. It's more just a cute extra card to have around. So there's only one here. Especially its main use is for Shantoto or to redundancy on Riku. If you don't have something like a Stola or Misdragon to protect it, then you can use the Althea. You back it with the Althea, so if they go to kill the Riku and its monster, you can then use Althea to get it back as well. Tyro is the last one. Standard EX, it's an Earth backup, which is also a Wind backup. Can get you Ishtola, if you need protection, Riku, if you need a loop, whatever. I don't really need to explain this card. And that's... it's actually surprising how reliable and fast it is to loop someone and win the game that way. Shantoto is a huge thing, but you know, Tilika is a card that probably shouldn't exist. It basically only exists to do degenerate stuff like this. So I made a Facebook post about 3 months ago, just a private one, just for myself. That was oops, not that. This, just so I could have it there, just to remind myself. But I do think the card is shouldn't exist, and I think it skews balance a lot. The fact that we can create something like this out of it, you know, that's only going to get worse. We're only going to see more loops, infinites, degenerate things you can do when everything costs one less, because everything's designed around its cost. So the moment you know, subvert that, now all these cards that are designed, that are meant to be balanced around the cost they have, they're no longer balanced. So yeah, that's my loop deck anyway. So you know, feel free to give it a shot. I've had a lot of success with it. I find it, you know, I find it fun when I'm doing it. Obviously, it's not fun for my opponent a lot of the time. The problem is that's the case with a lot of decks these days. We're at the point now where Final Fantasy is getting closer to other card games where the things decks do are good enough that if you do your deck's thing, your opponent probably doesn't get to really play or interact as much. And so Neo XX is a big example of that. That's another discussion though. I won't go into that. But yeah, basically, I think the main reason, I think people have latched too much onto Shikarees, and I think that's, you know, while it's cute and it's fun and, you know, the loop seems like a natural fit in the Shikarees, I think that's looking at it the wrong way. I think instead of looking where to fit the loop in, you should be looking at how to get the most out of the loop. And in that case, I don't think Shikarees are the best way, because they don't actually help you get to the loop or do the loop at all. And they have a sort of bottlenecky area of how they actually kill your opponent off the loop when you don't need to rely on that many cards to actually, you know, get the kill. So that's my take on it. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I hope that's informative, enjoyable. Cheers.